Welcome everyone to the first video of the series, The Openings. It is finally here. So for this first video, I will just be going through some basic opening ideas, and it is very important to keep those in mind because you will be so based on learning those ideas, you will be able to grasp some crucial points in many openings. So it's very important to keep these ideas in mind. So I will be introducing many ideas, and let's just get started. So basically, opening is about strategy. So most players think that the opening is centered around the development of the respective armies. Well, while true in a limited sense, this is actually a view that misses the big picture. So the real purpose of the opening is to create a difference or a series of differences in the respective positions, and then develop your army around these facts. So for example, if you're white, get to advance your pawns to d4 and e4. While your opponent places his pawn on e6 and d6. Okay, you will enjoy a spatial plus because you're controlling you're basically controlling these squares. So but the enemy cannot control your side of the board. So you will then develop your forces in such a manner as to highlight this advantage. So for example, you want to play c4, you want to play knight c3, you want to play knight f3, try to control more and more space in the enemy's camp. So another typical example centers around black playing bishop. So for example, if black plays here, and then you play here, and for example you have an opening, right? And then for example you just normally develop. So this is an idea that this is an idea that occurs very frequently. So black plays bishop c8 to g4 and try to trade off your f3 knight. So this common exchange creates an imbalance of bishop versus knight. So as soon as this appears on the board, white would place his pieces and pawns on squares that highlight the powers of his bishops. And black, on the other hand, would play for a close positions because he has two knights. And he will play a close positions to restrict the movement of your two bishops. And so he would try to create advanced support points that would ultimately enable his horses to become equal or superior to the enemy bishops. So you, on the other hand, you want open diagonals, so that will be very crucial to the power of the bishops. And let's go to another part of our today's video. So another part of this video is about castling. So this move allows you to do more than two things at once. So for example, you just castle. So what does it do? Well, so you are able to get your king out of the corner, out of the center, sorry, to the corner, where it gets in the center. So the king gets in the way of the rooks and is very vulnerable to enemy's central attack. And two, you're able to get a rook to the center, where it can defend key central pawns or find active open central files. So for example, black just plays here. You can play rook e1, controlling this file, and maybe you want to play d4, and so maybe you want to move the knight in the future and don't want this pawn to get under attack, so you might want to just defend this pawn. Or you wanna so maybe the enemy king doesn't castle. You want the center to explode, and you want your rook to be very active on this file. So that's another point about castling. So many of us put off castling or avoid it altogether. This is actually a serious mistake. So In general, you should get castled as quickly as possible. Most decisive forays into the enemy's camp should only be undertaken after you get your king safely castled. So castling can be delayed if the center is closed because the enemy pieces won't be able to get your king due to the lack of open files and diagonals. And so, for example, in my favorite opening, so the French defense, actually, you don't get to really castle until like move 13 or like after 10 basically. So that's because, for example, they're playing a French defense advanced variation. They want to, so maybe so in a variation of the French defense advanced variation, where you might in which you play a3. This is a very close position, so none of the pawns are getting traded, and then so the pawns are forming what's called a pawn barrier. So the center is very close. In this case, though, you can delay castling or just avoid castling altogether. So maybe you want to just develop your knights, get your queen, and just get active before you get castle, because you know, like those pieces aren't getting to your king very soon. So you can so you can basically develop before you get castled, because your king is not under attack. So castling can also be avoided if an early exchange of queens occurs that precludes the possibility of any kind of center assault. So basically, if you get to this position, for example, like say you're playing a Scotch game. Okay, so for example, so black doesn't know what he's doing. He gets all his pieces trade off. So in this case, though, you just exchanged off the most powerful pieces on the board. That is the queens. So there aren't really many threats to your king anymore. So that is another possibility that you can delay castling. So basically, you are just entering an end game, and in this case, you will be most likely winning. So the existence of an open center should be likened to a neon sign saying "castle immediately, castle immediately." So an example of an open center might be something like so for example the four knights so the four knights Scotch. So for example, as I remember, the theory goes something like this. So for example, the four knights Scotch, or something like this. So in this case, though, because the center is so open, like queen is directly pinning the pawn to your king, right? So pawn cannot move. So you have to use some other piece to block the king. So in this case, the center is very open. Black can explode the center at any moment. For example, with d6 or d5, right? And then the center won't have any pawns left. And it's a very open position. So if you don't castle, your king will be definitely under attack, and it's very dangerous. It will be very hard to play if you don't castle. And then enemy will form all sorts of nasty tactics on your king. So it's very unpleasant to play in this position. And another aspect of this video I'll be covering is development. So it is important to develop your whole army. So note the word whole. So many of us just get a few pieces out and launch an attack. So the correct way to play chess is to develop each and every piece, because chess is a team game, quote unquote team game. So you have to get your king safely castled, and only then begin more aggressive maneuvers. So for example, in a very early opening stage, for example, you don't play d3. So the reason why you don't play something like moves like d3 is because although it opens up the diagonal of your dark square bishop, it blocks in. So it boxes in your light square bishop, right? So your light square bishop cannot get active. So if you so for example, if I just play here and enemy just play here, then so if you play this move now, then it just so it makes perfect sense because your bishop is already active, and compared to move like this, it doesn't get restricted, right? So it's passive in this position, but if you get active with bishop c4, then you start to play like move like d3, then you can gain a very active position, right? So the necessity for quick development depends on the type of center that exists. So for example, if the center is closed, again, if it's like a French advanced variation, development is not necessarily a priority because the enemy pieces won't be able to break into your positions. But however, if the center is open, like the Scotch game we just saw like a few minutes ago, meaning that the open files and diagonals penetrate into your camp, development takes on a great significance. So a typical beginner's mistake centers around the queen. So that is, so we all make those mistakes when when we first play chess. So we are like, oh, I know I can checkmate my opponent in 4 moves. I can get my queen out. Like if say black plays here, I can mate, right? If black plays something like I don't know, like here, I can take the pawn, and then king goes away. I can take the bishop. Oh, my queen is so strong. And again, it's partly correct. Your queen is strong, but you have to remember, so while your queen being strong, it is also a responsibility to protect your queen, right? Because it's so strong, you don't want to trade your queen for any other of the enemy's pieces, except the enemy's queen, right? So, for example, if you just play here, and then, for example, you just want to develop, I can attack your queen with my knight, right? So that's called a tempo. So they're gaining a tempo on you. So you have to move your queen because you don't want to trade your queen with the enemy's knight because so the knight is not worth as much as their queen. So this is a typical beginner's mistake. So in general, don't move the queen too early because it can very easily come under attack. It's powerful, yes, but it becomes a responsibility to protect it later in the game. And so because of the queen's enormous value, it is vulnerable to tempo gaining attacks like this thing, like knight f6, attacking our queen by lesser enemy units. So a good rule of thumb calls for the queen to be developed no further than the 2nd or 3rd ranks. Okay? So this is the 2nd or the 3rd ranks. Okay? Far from the touch of enemy pieces, basically. So you should only use the queen in a more aggressive manner later in the game. So there's basically an opening called the Scandinavian defense. I don't really like this opening because the queen gets out very early in the game and it can very easily come under attack. So you have to go queen a5. Like for example, this is this is a line. So basically, I don't really recommend the Scandinavian defense just because you get your queen out on move 2, and it's so for example this tempo gaining. So basically this gains a tempo. You have to move, and then for example I just normally develop. You also normally develop, and for example I can just play like so I can basically play knight e4, attacking your queen again, and also attacking your knight. So I don't really recommend this opening because your queen can get really easily. So your queen is very easily exposed and attacked very easily. So that's one thing about not to get to so like basically not to get a queen developed so early in the game. And also another part of the game is called Fianchetto. So this Italian word, this is Italian. It's not originally in it's not an English word. This Italian word pronounced fianchetto, spelled Fianchetto. Fianchetto means on the flank. Okay, so this alludes to a white bishop placed on g2 or b2, and the black bishop placed on g7 or b7. So a glance at the chessboard shows us that so for example, a1 to the h8 diagonals and the a8 to the h1 diagonals are the longest on the board, right? There's no longer diagonals on the board in an 8x8 chessboard, right? So it stands to reason then that developing a bishop onto this quote-unquote highway might turn out to be a very good idea. So in response to this, various openings have been devised where white or black fianchettos a bishop in the hope of making it as active as possible. So examples of this are Larsen's opening. So you play b3 followed by bishop b2. For example, I just play normal. You play bishop b2, attacking the pawn. And Reitzi's opening. So for example, like knight f3, followed by g3 and bishop g2. So in a perfect world, it looks like something like bishop g2. Getting your bishop onto this quote-unquote highway where it just patrols the entire a8 to h1 diagonal. And the King's Indian defense, which we will not be covering now because it's a very complicated opening. So my opinion on fianchettos is that I don't recommend them. So why? Because, so for example, if you're playing white, right? If you're playing white, you have a tempo. So you are playing prior to the black's move, right? Because you're playing before black makes a move. So this gives you an advantage. It's like around 0.5 as computer shows. So this gives you an advantage in terms of development. So every move that blacks make will be after you've made a move, right? So you have a development advantage. So for this one, so for fianchettos, I don't really recommend as white because you let black get the advantage of the center that you should be getting, right? So you are white and you are trying to get development before black gets enough development, but it turns out you're just placing two bishops. You're spending 4 moves, 2 moves on the pawn that doesn't relate to the center, and 2 bishop that doesn't really do anything earlier at this stage. So as white, you should try to get more activity in the center, try to throw your opponent off balance with your quick development moves. So as white, I don't really recommend double fianchetto or even single fianchetto. So as black, I don't recommend it either because you are playing after white has made a move. So you have a natural disadvantage because you're playing second, right? So again, why are you just why do you play slow when you're already slow on development, right? So you have to strike out. You have to strike out with aggressive play to knock white off balance with your development. And so this doesn't make sense, okay? This doesn't make sense to me because you're already late in development. Why do you spend 4 extra moves doing nonsense, and then so those moves aren't really related to the center? Why are you playing 2 pawn moves that doesn't have anything to development or controlling the center rates? So this is my own opinion on fianchetto. I don't really recommend them, but Also, there are there are many opening systems that require you to play Fianchetto. For example, the Grunfeld or the King's Indian. So the theory goes like this. So basically, you put the knight out first before you put the bishop out. So this is something I like because at least you're developing a piece, right? You're not just you're not just following random instruction. You just put bishop on the diagonal. No, you develop first, then you adapt to the situation, and then you decide, okay, my bishop is very strong here because I can attack this pawn. This pawn might be very weak in the future, and also my king is very safe here. So this is something I like. You have to see what your opponent is doing, not just okay, whatever my opponent plays, I'm going to Fianchetto. No, so you have to like adapt to what your opponent is trying to throw at you. So for example, if my opponent plays e4, I'm not gonna play g6. I'm just gonna play the French. So if my opponent plays d4, so personally I play the Grunfeld. So I'm going to put my bishop on this diagonal to pressure this pawn. So as the theory goes, knight c3, you strike in the center. You don't yet put the bishop in the diagonal because you have to first control the center, or in this case, give up the center because it's Grunfeld, and or you have to develop peace, right? You don't just as I said, you don't just adapt. Like you don't just not adapt to what your opponent's plan. So for example, in Grunfeld, you develop this beautiful bishop, right? This beautiful bishop just patrols the entire h8 to a1 diagonal, where like the rook is under attack. So for example, you strike out in the center immediately. If takes, it's a forking the king and the rook, and then for example, opponents responds with something like bishop e3. You can play like knight c6, queen a5. So you work together with your Fianchetto bishop, right? So that's how you adapt to your opponent's play. And also another point in this video is the opening systems. So every serious player needs some sort of opening repertoire. So for example, me, I play the French against e4. I play the Grunfeld against d4. As white, I play the Gioco piano. So something like that. So though a certain amount of memorization is required, you have to buy, like, not necessarily buy books. So you have to memorize lines, and it's sometimes very tedious, but you have to improve by memorizing lines. So you can go a long way by simply knowing the basic ideas in this video, in structures and plans. So the following, in future videos, I'll be breaking down some opening systems that you might like. So for example, there's opening system called the London system, in which you try to develop your bishop to f4 very early on. You try to play knight f3, e3, bishop d3, c4, knight c3, and castle, or something like that. So that's a system. Basically, if black just does nothing here, in a perfect world, it will look something like this. So for example, you play c4, try to develop your bishop, you try to develop your knight, you try to castle, right? You try to put your queen on a more active square. So that is a system in which whatever your opponent does, you're just going to play the same. Like this sort of structure. Like whatever your opponent plays, you're going to play this. But I don't really recommend this because it's not really exciting. Like in my opinion, chess is very exciting, and if you don't, you just comply to playing systems, it's not really a fun game anymore. It's just like memorization. It's like robotic things. So I don't really recommend like doing opening systems. Also, there's another opening systems in the French exchange variation. So basically, you take. You basically mimic whatever white does. Bishop d3, okay, bishop d6, knight f3, knight f6, castle, okay, castle. You basically play bishop g5, bishop g4, c3, c6, knight d2, knight d7, queen c2, queen c7, and like rook a e1 and rook a e8. I hate those openings. You know why? Because you're doing exactly the same as white, and it's so drawish. Like chess is about excitement. This is symmetrical. This is completely balanced. You don't have anything. You don't have any advantage in these sort of openings. And moreover, as black, white is doing everything, like every step prior to you. So white will always like most likely have an advantage over you. So basically, if I'm faced with French exchange variation, like for example ED, for example knight f3, I will be going for something similar to a Jobava London system as white. So for example, you want to try to play knight c6 instead of go to c6. You try to go to bishop g4, and you try to go to queen d7 and long castle. So that is really exciting because this just involves massive pawn storm. You storm down the board, you attack. So in my opinion, that's chess. So chess is all about excitement. So that's just my personal opinion. You can have completely different opinion. That's just completely fine. But in my opinion, opening system aren't really realistic. Aren't really not realistic, but like not really exciting because you just do everything like the same the whole time. So in conclusion, we have 6 points. 6 points to keep in mind in this video. 1, you have to develop quickly. Okay. 2, you have to control the center. Right. So for example, you develop a knight, but if it doesn't control the center, it's nonsense. Okay. 3, you have to protect your king by either castling short or castling long. Or if it's a close position, you can just don't castle, but it's safe. So in most position, it's the safest to castle first, then to do stuff. Okay. 4, don't move the same piece twice, because again, you want to control the center with other pieces. You want to develop other pieces. You want to protect your king. Like if you like move your basically if you just move your pieces back and forth, or you don't like it's not really well, it's not efficient. Like if you, for example, you try to do like this, so you move your piece twice in this situation, and so basically you spend 2 tempos so basically you use 2 tempos on a knight, and you could use an extra tempo on other pieces, right? So instead of playing another knight move, you can develop your bishop, right? So give other pieces a chance. Why do you keep moving the same piece, right? And then again, don't just box in your pieces, because they will feel very angry for not developing them, okay? And 5, don't play moves that are outside of the opening. So this includes something like if you're just playing d4, d5, you don't want to play a random move like a3. Doesn't make sense, right? If you want to play a queen's gambit, play a queen's gambit, just play it, right? So don't play something that is not included in the opening. So again, openings are something that people created a long ago. So it's trustworthy. So don't like basically quote unquote invent moves that well, sometimes you can, but mostly the invention won't be really I mean, the invention like isn't the best move, right? So and then the last point to take in is that I didn't say this before, but you should try to develop while interrupting others developing. So like others development moves. So like for example, if for example in a very so for example they're trying to play the Alekine's defense. It's a direct assault against your pawn, and you might think, oh my, so the knight is attacking my pawn. What should I do? Let me just play knight c3 instead. Don't do that. Don't do that. So if they develop, for example, in this case, so if they develop a knight, just automatically go to rule number 6. Okay, so you're developing and you want to try to hinder others' ability of developing. You don't want to just give them like all what they want. So what they want is to play e5, try to stop your pawn from advancing, and then if you play something like knight c3, they'll just play e5. Okay, so that's what they want. You don't want to let them get what they want, right? So you have to annoy your opponent, right? So for example, you have to play e5. They get away. You play c4. They get away. Then you play d4. So again, you help them to break the opening rule, right? So basically allow them to break the openings rule by repeatedly annoying your opponent, right? So that's the rule number 6, and it's the last rule to this video. And if you have any questions, please comment below. And again, please stay tuned for more chess opening videos, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Stay tuned. Again, bye bye.